My sister and her husband were sent to prison at the start of this year, and sadly won't be released for a few years. That left me to look after their 15-year-old daughter Amy. I was perfectly happy to do this, but as most of their wealth was seized for being ill-gotten, it's meant that I've been having to care for her out of my own pocket. Once again, this doesn't bother me, but it's meant massive life changes for the kid. Firstly, they sent her to a private school. I can't afford anywhere near those fees, so I had to transfer her to a local school. She was upset at this at first, but she quickly made friends and is excelling academically, so this isn't a huge problem. She's been off school for the last few months anyway due to the situation. A bigger problem is clothing. Like my sister, Amy loves fashion and designer stuff. She's still got a lot of stuff that her parents got her, but she's always on the lookout for new clothes. Unfortunately, I can't afford anywhere near the sort of stuff she likes. And I also have 2 children of my own whose clothing I have to pay for. I have told my sister this, but she insists I should make allowances because her daughter is going through a tough time. Amy also really doesn't get along with my daughter Hannah, who is 11. She bullies her, calls her stupid and ugly, tells her none of her friends really like her, etc. She has made her cry on many occasions and often continues to taunt Hannah while she cries. Yesterday I caught Amy trying to buy a dress costing over $1,000 with my card. I was fuming and had a long conversation with her. She cried and sobbed that she just wanted one nice thing. My sister called from the prison, and Amy cried over the phone that she hates here and I treat her unfairly. I spoke to my sister afterwards and she begged me to go easy on her daughter because she's still adjusting. I put food on this kid's plate. I buy her whatever clothes I can afford, even if they aren't to her taste. I take her to visit her parents as much as possible. They're held in different facilities. And I do all of that on top of working and looking after my own children. I told my sister that I was willing to look after her daughter for as long as she needs. But if anything like the card incident happens again, or if she continues to pick on my daughter, there will be serious consequences for her. My sister wanted to argue, but they get limited time on the prison phone. I think what I'm doing is right. I get that the kid is going through a tough time, and I'm doing everything I can to be there for her. But I can't just tolerate bad behavior or bullying, and I can't afford to pay for her expensive clothing. The fact that she's struggling to deal with what happened to her parents doesn't change that. My daughter received a bike from her uncle, my brother, on her 11th birthday. She was over the moon and excited to use it because it was on her wish list for so long. Days ago, I discovered that my husband reached out to my brother to ask for the recipient for the bike and returned it to the store, and kept the money for himself while my daughter was at school. The bike was at home. My daughter and I got home and she started crying after noticing the bike was gone. My husband was home at the time. He told me he returned the bike and got money in return to spend on something useful for us since the bike was just there as a distraction and there was no need for it now since we're the dead of winter. I was aggravated and lost it on him, saying it wasn't his, didn't come from him. And he didn't pay for it, so he had no right to touch it, knowing our daughter's been wanting it for a long time, and my brother was decent enough to buy it for her despite barely having money to get him by. I told him what he did was theft and insisted he hand over the money to me so I could repurchase it, but he said he spent it on stuff for the house and doesn't have any money left now. But I knew about the money he was stashing away in the bedroom that he forbade me from tossing, and I took some of it and went out to repurchase the bike while he was out the next day. He found out and verbally lashed out at me, saying I should have never touched the money he was saving for himself, which isn't much, but I lashed right back that I had to so I could repurchase the bike he took from under our daughter. He explained that he didn't keep the money for himself and instead spent it for necessities for our home, but he was at fault for taking the bike in the first place and he was responsible for getting it back. He yelled at me for almost 10 minutes, then stormed outside and started smoking. My daughter asked why her dad was upset and that she no longer wants the bike if dad doesn't want her to have it. But I assured her that's not the case and told her she shouldn't feel guilty and to just focus on enjoying her bike. My husband hasn't stopped grilling me about how I disrespected and undermined him, and managed to make our daughter hate him after making him look like the bad guy. I again said he shouldn't have touched the bike. End of the story. He's called me thief and juvenile for taking money from his savings and being sneaky about it. I am a 32 years old female and getting married to my fiancé, a 41 male, next year. After we got engaged, I suggested it might be nice if I asked my fiancé's niece, who's 15, if she wanted to be a bridesmaid too. I've only met her a couple of times, so we're not close. But she seemed like a cool kid, and I thought it might be a nice way for us to bond / get to know each other / involve her in the wedding. She's the only niece / nephew on either side of the family. Anyway, cut to a few weeks ago and we're in my fiancé's hometown to visit his family and discuss wedding-related stuff. His brother, sister-in-law and their daughter came over, and I noticed this time that she was dressed a lot more androgynous than I remembered. The topic moved to wedding dresses and bridesmaids' dresses, and I could see she was immediately uncomfortable. Her parents, her mom really, and grandma were making comments about how she'd need to be more feminine / brush her hair, etc. And how nice it would be to see her like that. I'll be honest and say this hit a nerve with me, as I was very much a tomboy as a teenager, even though I'm not anymore. And it absolutely broke me whenever my relatives would say things like that. Eventually, her mother made a comment along the lines of, "It'll be nice to see you dressed like a girl for once." And she looked really sad / embarrassed / upset. In response, because that really hit a nerve, I immediately told her that my maid of honor would be wearing a trouser suit for the wedding and not a dress, and that I'd given all the bridesmaids the option of wearing anything they want as long as it's in the wedding color. To make things easier, I pulled out my phone and started showing her photos of the ideas my friend had sent me: the jumpsuit, culottes, a trouser suit, a tailored tux, etc., and let her know that she could pick anything at all she wanted. She could even wear jeans and trainers if that made her comfortable, and that it's a wedding, not a fashion show. My niece perked up a bit when I said that, but her mom looked really pissed off. She's since asked my fiancé to pressure me into getting all the bridesmaids' dresses so their daughter will have to wear one, which... No. My husband doesn't give a shit what she wears, but obviously also doesn't want his family and me to be arguing on the wedding day. I don't want to back down because I know what it feels like to be pressured into wearing something that makes you uncomfortable. But on the other hand, I know it's only for a day and it'd make the family happy. I have a lot of family members. I come from a religious community that doesn't believe in the public school system and tends to have a ton of kids. I have an older sister, Julia, a stepbrother, Ron, a stepsister, Molly, a half-brother, Joe, and a half-sister, Lucy. Growing up, all of us were homeschooled. This involved a lot of neglect, lack of textbooks or seasonally appropriate clothes / shoes, unheated house, and sometimes physical abuse. I lived mostly with my mom, but spent weekends with my step-family. Both houses were dysfunctional. My stepmom used to have a severe problem with alcoholism, although she's been better in the last few years. Ron is my best friend and I would be lost without him. We've supported each other through years of hard times. And we discuss a lot how our lives could have been different if we'd been sent to school or generally had a more healthy home life. Obviously, we don't want the same thing for our younger siblings, and don't want to see them struggling in minimum wage jobs while trying to study for a GED the way we're doing. When I went to visit him recently, I found that my stepmom had gone out of the country for an entire week and left the youngest two at the house. Ron and Molly both work. Molly hasn't been doing any homeschooling for about 2 years, and are out of the house for most of the day and night. I tried to help Lucy with her math homework, but she was extremely behind grade level and kept getting distracted because she had to make lunch or do chores. Joe spends all day in his room playing video games and gets no guidance from anyone. I tried to as gently as possible get him to do some reading, but he doesn't understand how serious the situation is, and obviously is having too much fun to care. So I called CPS and reported educational neglect. And obviously everyone knew it was me. And Ron told me that stepmom said I wasn't welcome at the house anymore and to never contact any of them again. Molly is extremely mad at me. She blocked me on Facebook and doesn't have a cell phone where I can reach her. Julia, who somehow heard about all this despite living across the country, also blocked me on Facebook and reported my Facebook as impersonating a celebrity. Facebook deleted it, generally making everything harder. This stings even more because I'm already estranged from my bio mom over my religious beliefs. I now have no family members left, besides Ron, thank bejeebus, who want anything to do with me. I feel like I make enemies everywhere I go. Ron has been saying for years that he can't call CPS, and I guess this is why, but at least he doesn't blame me. He suggested that I try to talk to stepmom once some time has passed, but I would have no idea where to begin.